So today I wanted to bring the topic of silence and why we are so uncomfortable with it and why it might be a good idea to become more comfortable with it. So as a therapist, it is actually very important to be okay with silences and be able to give your client the space to just be with that silence, and a lot of really valuable stuff can come out of that, even though it's probably going to come through a lot of discomfort at first. And as a therapist, even you feel discomfort with silence, and with more training, you start to realize there are a lot of benefits to silence, and so you become better at just sitting with that discomfort and allowing it to pass and giving space instead for the silence to give way for more things. I'm going to speak a little bit more generally about why I think people are uncomfortable with silences, not exclusively in the therapeutic setting, but actually in general, and maybe why you would want to train yourself to be more okay with silences. By the way, hi, I'm Marius. I'm a trainee counselling psychologist living in London, and on this channel we talk about psychology and anything I think you might find interesting or useful. Stick around, subscribe and like to support the channel. That would really help. Thank you. Right, so silence. Why is it so uncomfortable? Well, I think it's uncomfortable because silence might signify that you don't know what to say. Someone might say something quite emotional and then there is silence. What does that mean? Does that mean that this thing that they've shared is unacceptable, it's shameful? And whose feelings are those? Is it the person speaking or the person listening? So both of those parties are going to be thinking about, oh, maybe I should fill the silence for them to make them feel less uncomfortable. Oh no, don't worry, it's okay. Or, you know, that's fine, everyone experiences that, or whatever it is. Whereas actually just being silent and taking in the weight of what's being said can be quite healing. And it's really a way of being honest about the fact that there might not be something specific to say, and you have to be okay with that. We're not okay with leaving the silence because it might mean I'm too scared to put anything there, I don't have the right thing to say, or what I have to say is unacceptable and therefore I'd rather not share it. And that can come from either side. And so both of them are sitting there kind of like, okay, well, as long as there's no silence, we're just saying, yeah, that's okay. Is that okay? That's okay. That's okay. And it's just kind of tennis match of making it feel like it's not something to panic about, basically. And in general, there's kind of this sense that if things are silent, something is going wrong. Maybe when you feel very, very comfortable with someone, you're okay with long bouts of silence. When you're just really familiar and you're okay with silence, that you trust them enough to be silent with them. But I think with most people, we're just not that comfortable, we're not that okay. It's like, are we not interesting enough? Are we not connected enough? And those could be things that are actually happening, but it's more the concern with the fact that it's happening that's really the problem. It's like, I can't entertain the idea that there's something wrong, and I can't sit with the discomfort that something might be wrong through this silence. And so instead, I'm just going to fill it with whatever I can to make it seem more acceptable. Also, another thing is we really can't, I think, I speak about this in other videos, but this whole discomfort with boredom, like we can't be bored for 1 second. We've got to switch, go to the new thing, next video, next TikTok, whatever it is. That really shortness of attention, I think, means that boredom is also really bad, because it's similar to when you have a free moment and you pick up your phone just to see if there's anything to do. It's very much the same. So silence is there, there's a vacuum, and you just want to fill it. Now, I'm not saying that we should just be silent all the time, or that we should introduce silence artificially, but I would try and think about it as, when you do notice silence, are you immediately jumping to fill that silence? And if so, why? Are you doing it for yourself to make yourself feel better? Do you think it's for the other person? Are you trying to help them in some way to make them not feel uncomfortable? Or do you think neither of you can handle the fact that silence is there? So there's a kind of dual purpose there. Because at least being able to tolerate the silence has to be a skill that you develop, because there are moments where silence is necessary. You don't need to jump in the immediate next moment where there is a chance given, when there is silence. Oh, here's my piece, here's my piece. It's not always necessary. You might want to just sit with what that person has said and feel it a bit more deeply. And I think that other person might appreciate that, is you taking the time to sit back and digest it, in a meaningful way. And that can entail just taking a pause, which includes silence. And if they want to bring more, let them bring more. That's okay. The silence could be saying, I'm going to hold even more space for you to open up about this thing. And I'm curious, but I don't need to bring my opinion in yet. And I'm just going to wait for you to feel comfortable to bring in more. Being silent also doesn't mean that you have to look completely disengaged. You can be listening attentively and be silent. You've got your physical movements, you've got non-verbal cues that are not words. Like we'll have the saying, right, or like repeating things. Now that can become formulaic if someone is just mirroring, oh yeah, like repeating the last sentence that someone said exactly. There's natural ways of doing it, there's unnatural ways of doing it. But I guess the point is using whatever style is natural to you to show that you're listening, but without actually introducing new material, filling the silence with loads of words, or diverting in some way. Just showing that I'm here, I'm listening, I'm with you, I'm following what you're saying, and then allowing for that silence. Or another way, if you're not comfortable with silences yet, is just to follow the word that you think is most impactful from what they last said, or something that you think is unclear or there's more to it. You might say, it felt empty, I felt empty. So empty. And then all you said was empty. You just gave back the same word, and then they're saying, yeah, I felt really empty because da 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 da, and then it moves on. So that's not exactly silence, but it's a stepping stone. Also, it's not like you have to always end up in silence. I think what I just said around repeating that word is a genuine way of dropping into a deeper level of listening when that person is speaking. But I'm just kind of giving you a number of different approaches so you don't have to go straight into the silence if you feel uncomfortable. If you can experiment with just silence, go for that. But if you want to experiment more with active listening, one thing you could do is just listen out for a loaded word, that whatever had the most impact to you or you're most curious about, and just repeat that word or short phrase that that person said and see what more they'd like to say about that to explain. So all I'm saying is you don't need to give your own version of what they said in a really detailed way or your own opinion straight away. Try and put that off as long as possible, because sometimes when someone's explaining something meaningful to them or emotional, all they need is for you to hold space, meaning giving them the time and attention and space, physical and metaphorical, emotional, to express themselves, to feel like they can keep going, that this is not too much, that you are going to sit through it the whole time with them and listen throughout, and then see how much impact that has on them. So being able to use silence effectively is a really key skill if you're going to do that, because if you just keep filling the air with words, you're effectively demeaning as well the value of those words, you might argue, because you're just throwing them out, whatever comes out, next. Whereas sitting back and really reflecting, sitting with whatever's coming up for you in response to what they're telling you, means that you are being patient and listening on a deeper level. And then when you do speak, it's going to feel more in tune. You're going to have more time to connect with what words really are most effective to communicate your response to what they've said. And I think a lot of the time then that person's really going to feel heard because you took the time to sit with the whole of what they're saying. You allowed them to continue to keep going as much as they needed to keep explaining how this is impacting them. And then when you feel like you can summarize that well, or you actually can connect with the feeling, you communicate it in a clearer way. If you do it too quickly, you're just trying to get in the most obvious, immediate response to it. But sometimes you have to listen to a whole story, the proper story, the entire story, and then come to a conclusion or a thought or a response, right? Imagine watching a film and you're constantly commenting on every scene. It cuts the experience into these micro elements. You don't really get the full impression. There's virtue in the patience of watching the whole thing and seeing the journey, notice the arcs and the dips. Those are going to tell you something about the intention of the person who directed the film or wrote the story. And in a way, everyone is giving you stories like that. So following them and just allowing them to give you the experience, and allowing silence, meaning a gap for them to continue to take their own breath, to reflect a bit and keep going if they need to. Maybe they need a little prompt from you too to feel like it's okay to keep going, and that's fine. But resisting coming in immediately with your own narrative, your own explanations, your own solutions, all of those things can be invalidating if you don't allow enough space for that person to just get it off their chest. And I think it's going to serve you and the people around you to be able to use the skill of silence. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or your own reflections on this, and I'll see you in the next one. Cool. Look after yourself.